Ladies and gentlemen, what's up, and welcome to today's video. We're going to be having a look at the early data mine abilities for both Yondu and Nebula in Marvel Contest of Champions. Now, a huge shout out to Marvel Contest of Champions Tricos, who put this video and information up yesterday evening. Does a great job as soon as the patch hits, just getting the early info for the new characters. And while we have like a very kind of good rough idea of what the characters are going to do and their utility and various abilities that they have, one of the things that the data mine abilities and info is always lacking is exact numerical values for stuff. So you see a lot of X in place of a number, so that makes it very, very hard from this information to determine like exactly how good a character is going to be. But hopefully in this video we can get a fairly solid idea of what the characters are going to be able to do, and maybe make some like rough early prediction as to where these characters will be good in the game and their various uses. So we're going to start off by having a look at Yondu. I've been looking forward to Yondu for such an incredibly long time. I was actually fairly certain the Yondu was going to be a cosmic character. However, both of the characters have been confirmed to be tech from a screenshot yesterday. So yes, both Yondu and Nebula will be joining the tech class, which I think is probably the right move, considering like tech in terms of the amount of characters in there is probably it's the least class at the moment. And a lot of the characters in tech are a little bit ass, and Yondu and Nebula, they seem relatively good. So hopefully they should make a very nice addition to that class, as well as Nebula being the first female tech champion, so that's pretty damn cool. Anyway, let's talk about Yondu's abilities. So the first thing he has is ability accuracy, so somehow gets a buff, or I don't know if this is a passive that increases his offensive ability accuracy. I assume it's tied into some sort of special attack, but it's not very clear there. Now the next one is arm steal. Now Yondu has a percentage chance to steal the target's armor. And the additional line here, which has confused a lot of people, is it says which he might be able to trade for units later. Now, I do not think they're going to add a character that is like a walking cash machine, and every time you steal like the opponent's armor, you're going to get a stack of units. We can be hopeful about that, right? But I think it's just something to do really with the lore and flavor of the character, because, you know, he's a Ravager, he's a space pirate, he's stealing stuff, he's selling it. So I think despite that being the dream that whenever you steal an opponent's armor, you can get a nice stack of units, I don't think that's going to make it into reality there, but it would be pretty cool if it did. Now, the next ability that he has, which is the one that I'm quite interested about, so this is called, well, it's labeled as powered, so I believe this is on the opponent. The opponent will generate a certain percentage less power for each debuff they suffer, and there's a max percentage of that. So that seems like a really, really interesting mechanic. I don't think we have any mechanics in the game that limit power gain. We have power drain, we have power lock, but we don't have anything that kind of reduces power gain outside some of the nodes that you see in like Alliance Quest, Alliance War. So I think that's a bit of an interesting ability there. I'm really interested to see how that works and kind of the practical applications it has. But I don't know, that makes me a little bit, that's a nice little bit of utility to have. It just depends, you know, how effective it is. If it's like 10% less effective, you know, it might not be so good, but if it's something like 50%, it might be pretty amazing for a lot of fights, especially in this kind of Alliance War meta, where champions, you know, Mystic champions just with like insane power gain are just dominating. So to kind of gimp the opponent's power gain, I know it seems pretty damn good, but we'll see what's up with that. So the special one has a percentage chance to inflict heal block, but if the target is already regenerating, it guarantees you inflict heal block. So that seems pretty useful there. Special one heal block, that's always quite valuable. Special 2 has block penetration, and apparently will also give you fury for each special attack activated by the enemy throughout this fight. So the longer the fight, the more special attacks the enemy activates, the more fury you'll get from the special attack too. So fairly interesting mechanic there. I guess it all depends on, you know, exactly how powerful the fury is and how many times that stacks. If it stacks up to like, I don't know, 100 times, and if it's a nice chunk of fury, Yondu might be like the next Star-Lord. Like if you could continually bait the special one on Winter Soldier. I think I'm being like a bit too hopeful with this ability, but it might work. It might turn out that way. It probably won't though. Now the next one, special 3, I'd really like a little bit of contribution from the comments, because I can't really think of a super great use for this one. So basically your special 3 will, I'll read out the text, it's a little bit easier that way. So, severely damaged by the Yakka arrow, enemies are unable to trigger abilities during their next special attack. So anything that would proc on a special attack will not be triggered. But I don't think, like, when you're playing this character, it has much of an implication on a lot of fights, because a lot of stuff triggered by special attacks, like crazy bleeds or additional damage effects, only really make contact. You know, if you're getting hit, and if you're playing perfectly, you're not getting hit, so this doesn't matter. The only, like, possible thing I thought of was, like, Nightcrawler's Special 1, where he gets the evade buff. And yeah, it would allow him not to get the evade buff on his next Special 1, but for Nightcrawler, he can just turn off his evade anyway, so I have not really thought of a great synergy of that yet, but if anybody has any, like, super pro tips, feel free to leave it in the comments below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So the next one is, if the target is immune to bleed, they suffer an X armor break for X seconds instead, but there isn't anything on Yondu's abilities list here, which leads me to believe, I think it might be a little bit incomplete, that Yondu is a bleed character. I imagine he has some way of generating bleed, maybe via his passive attacks, and if he does, that would be really, really good, especially with the generate X less power for each debuff the target has. So yeah, it kind of looks like there might be information on a bleed missing there, but if the target is immune to bleed, they suffer an X armor break, but it might be something exclusive to, like, fighting robot characters or bleed immune characters. So yeah, interested to see, you know, exactly what that ability is when it comes into the game. But again, more debuffs, more less power gain, seems pretty good. And this is the one that really, really interests me as a defender. So I'm not too sure exactly how this is active, or it's active all the time. So the strength and precision of Yondu's Yakka arrow allows it to trigger critical hits and abilities through an enemy block. So this one seems like pretty crazy when it comes to the champion as an Alliance War defender, if you've got him on unstunnable. I don't know if that's on just, like, special attacks or all of his attacks, but if it is on all of his attacks and he's a bleed character and he's still critting and bleeding when he's attacking into a blocking opponent, I think that's going to make Yondu a really, really big pain in the ass to fight, because you'll just have to be an intercepting god to fight him. So a little bit interested to see how that ability works. It scares me a little bit of as an Alliance War defender, but at the same time, you know, there are ways to play around it by being good at intercepting instead of, like, Magic's Limbo, for example, where you just take damage and die. I guess there's a way to play around that with Power Drain, but Electro, I guess there's a way to play around with Electro as well. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested to see. Yondu is an Alliance War defender. I imagine he's probably going to be definitely one of the bosses for sure in next month's event. So yeah, seems relatively interesting. Now Yondu's Awakened ability, seems, let's just go back here, it seems a little bit garbage, but it might tie in quite nicely to his reduced power gain on the opponent. So it's called Centurion Archery, and enemies activating a special attack suffer weakness for each debuff effect they're suffering from at the time of activation, reducing attack by a certain amount for a certain amount of seconds. Now, it seems a little bit ass, because a lot of, like, weakness buffs are just they're so rubbish at the moment. Like, Ant-Man is probably one of the most predominant characters with a weakness buff, and he sucks most of the time. The only good thing about his weakness buff is you can convert into poison, but I guess this might have some interesting synergy with the power, the power gain limitation mechanic for each debuff on the opponent. So yeah, it might have some good synergy there. But aside from that, I think, like, looking at Yondu, we're gonna have to see, like, how predominant that power gimping is, and if it's really, really good, maybe a signature ability might be good. But my initial impression from Yondu is Yondu initially seems like a character that does not rely on being awakened to be a super, super great character, which I like. You know, that makes him maybe a potentially decent option to go for as a 5-star, but again, we're gonna have to, like, do a little bit more testing and find the full abilities before we can say that for sure. But you know, that's kind of my early thoughts on his ability there. Now, let's start off by looking at Nebula's abilities. So we're moving on to that character now. So when she's blocking, now I really hate this mechanic in a lot of characters. I just do not find it very fun at all. So she's got a block and charge mechanic, so you swipe back, you block, and you charge your weapon, generating a passive electroshock charge every X amount of seconds. So it seems like Nebula, just from kind of looking at her abilities, she kind of seems like a very powerful bleed champion, but instead of bleed, she uses shock instead. So shock has the advantage that no characters in the game, as far as I'm aware of, are shock immune at the moment. So yeah, that might be quite interesting. She also has a little bit of regeneration going on. So Nebula will start the fight with X self-repair charges that activate when the opponent deals more than X percentage of their attack in a single hit, repairing the damage taken over X seconds. So this kind of looks like it's going to be a little bit of a buffer if you're maybe a newer player. If you just mess up, you take a hit, it looks like Nebula has the option to repair that damage. But again, I don't know if you need to take like a lot of damage to activate this regen, because it seems like the regen is only activated when you take a pretty hefty chunk of damage. So yeah, I'm not really too sure about that. We're gonna have to see the value there though. What does she also have? Nebula overcharges her power generator for X seconds, inflicting shock when in contact with the opponent, dealing X energy damage over X seconds. Now, none of these abilities have been like associated with a special 1, special 2, or special 3, so I imagine like some of them will. She also has a power drain mechanic, which inflicts power drain, depleting up to X% of the target's max power per shock debuff on the opponent. I think that's a bit of an interesting one, you know, synergy with kind of like dashing backwards, getting these electroshock charges, kind of using them on the opponent, and then combining that with a power drain might be some pretty cool stuff. Also has a power lock, which will inflict power lock. Again, the duration of that power lock will be based on the amount of shock debuffs on the opponent. Also, against robots, she has ability accuracy of robots is reduced by X% per electroshock charge. So I think there are only like 2 really good characters which stand out, you know, this is going to be super effective against, and that's like Ultron and Ultron, Age of Ultron. Like both of those 2 characters going to stop their regen, the armor up buffs, but there really aren't too many robot characters in the game. There's Vision as well, but Visions are generally pretty easy to be on defense, so yeah, not too much of a problem there. I guess also having the power lock makes quite good against classic Vision, because you can like stop that potential like burst of power gain that he gets via his signature ability there. So might be fairly interesting. So shock damage shocks her opponent, dealing X energy damage over X seconds. No idea what that's associated to. Spend shock. So Nebula spends all electroshock charges to shock her opponent, dealing X damage per charge over X seconds. So I imagine, yeah, that's the one that you convert your block charges to your shocks. And then stack apply, so you can double the amount of shock debuffs on the opponent, dealing X damage per shock debuff over X seconds. Again, Nebula, you know, you have a rough idea of what she can do. She can heal, she can power lock, she can power drain, and she can reduce ability accuracy on robot opponents. But a lot of the shock stuff is really hard to determine its value without finding out exactly how it's applied, and also the duration of the shock to see how easy some of this stuff is to accomplish. But in terms of Nebula's signature ability, which is cybernetic enhancements, so when Nebula is out of self-repair charges, she tries to recalibrate her implants, granting her an X% chance to regain a charge every X seconds. I'm not really too sure about Nebula's regen at the moment, just because in the, you know, the hypothetical scenario where you're playing like absolutely perfectly, is it ever going to proc? You are ever going to use it? Can it be triggered by stuff like Magic's Limbo, Electro's damage back? These are questions that we have right now. So I'm not really too sure how I feel about Nebula's regen, but I guess we're going to have to see it in game. But I think Nebula, she kind of reminds me of like a bit of a shocking Gwenpool. I'm not too sure if she's going to have quite the damage output, but I'm very, very interested. But in terms of her signature ability as well, like if her regeneration really isn't that great, it looks like Nebula isn't a character that is going to be kind of relying on being awakened to be like super great. She looks like she has a lot of kind of her core mechanics unawakened. So I think that's probably one of the pros that I see initially about Yondu and Nebula, is none of them, from what I can see with the information that we have now, rely on being awakened to be super great characters. They all look like they have a solid base of utility, can do some interesting stuff unawakened. So yeah, I'm very excited to kind of to find out a little bit more about some of these characters and what exactly they're going to be good for in the game. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed watching today's video on Yondu and Nebula. Let me know in the comments below, which one do you think is going to be better? I'm kind of leaning towards, I think Nebula with her shock damage, with her power control mechanics, and self-repair. She kind of looks like she might be a pretty good Alliance War attacker. But again, it's a little bit hard to tell at this phase. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about the two new characters in the comments below. Any interesting synergies, interactions you thought of, chuck them down there. And yeah, we should be covering these characters in a little bit more detail when the MCOC mod video is probably released in a couple of days' time. It doesn't usually take them too long to get that up. So once we have full numerical values, we'll do a full cover then. But apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the early thoughts and overview video. If you did, feel free to smash that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. Apart from that, thank you for watching, take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.